Hey, what's good, everybody? Welcome back to PercReacts. I'm sorry I've not been making videos for y'all in a while, but uh, we're coming back with some new content for y'all. I'm gonna try and do more this week. I'm trying to do a stream, so get fired up. PercReacts is coming back, doing streams too, expanding to new fields, and yeah, you know what it's about. Let's get into it. Hilltop Crips of Tacoma, Washington. Uh, shout out my boy. He's from the TAC. Uh, he told me to watch this, so shout out the TAC man. Apparently, these guys have a really storied history, like back in the '90s and shit. So yeah, my base thoughts on this is really just that, like, who really needs to be violent in the TAC? Like, I don't, I never thought it was really like that over there, but we're about to find out. So yeah, let's get right into it.
To another episode of Swamp Stories. For this episode, we head up north to an area that nobody cares about. I'm actually being serious, but either way, there is some interesting history that most people
Nobody
don't know
cares
about.
about.
But before we get into it, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you're new. You can also follow the Instagram page as well. So let's get into it.
Let's get
For this
into it.
video, we cover one of the most beautiful yet uninteresting regions of the country. Welcome
It's
to the
just ripping on the
Pacific
tack, bro.
Northwest. The region pretty much stretches from Oregon all the way up to Vancouver, Canada. And for those of you who've never been here, it's really strange, especially if you're from California. The sun never comes out and it rains all year round. For most of us who like good weather, we would be miserable there. However, believe it or not, everyone isn't like us, and some people enjoy overcast weather. So
Dude,
since
this
the
is
very
just
start,
straight Tacoma
West
hate.
has attracted a very particular kind of person. People who don't smile when you walk by, don't say thank you when you hold the door, and lock their doors when they see someone who doesn't look like them. These are the kinds of people who have willingly moved to an expensive region with atrocious weather. And because of this, the Pacific Northwest has gained an extremely unfriendly and miserable reputation.
Wow.
However, it's really more specific to two cities, Seattle and Tacoma, Washington. I covered Seattle in a previous video, but didn't
Yeah, I
really
feel like a lot of people who are from like Tacoma and shit are really like angry all the time.
talk about the area in context.
If
So
you know,
let
you
me
know.
break it down. Since the very start, Seattle has been a wealthy city. From the gold rush in the early 1900s, the Boeing boom in the 1950s, and of course the New Age tech boom in the 1980s. And for those of you who don't know, Bill Gates founded Microsoft in Seattle in
Dude,
1979.
what does this have to do with the
Starbucks,
Crips?
Nordstrom's, and most importantly, Amazon. And with the massive growth of companies, major high-paying jobs have flooded the area since the start. Well, that's Seattle, which is pretty much the San Francisco of the North. Extreme wealth, glamour, and entitled. However, this doesn't represent the whole metro area. So let's take a 40-minute trip down I-5. The 40-minute trip.
I'm gonna just say, bro, like, this guy's a shitty YouTuber because we're watching Hilltop Crips right now in Tacoma, and he's talking about Seattle housing market. So
Trip down I-5. During this drive, you'll go from seeing Teslas, vegan cafes, and bored soccer moms to seeing the unexpected. The depression and despair start to sink in once you reach the town of Tukwila. And as you get further from Seattle, it only seems to get worse.
bro, what does this have to do
Finally, you
to
enter the city
here we
of
go, here we
Tacoma,
go, here we go.
the Oakland of the North.
The Oakland of the North? Who
Well, that's
Who
according to
says
them,
that?
their standards. The point is that Tacoma just isn't very nice. It's always been seen as Seattle's poor little cousin. Like, if all things go bad, you can always move to Tacoma and rent a cheap apartment and just give up on life. So it's safe to
Oh
say
my
that Tacoma has
God.
always had a bad reputation up north.
What happened to this guy when he was in Tacoma, bro? He said just give up on life.
Some of it is just classism from snobby Seattle, but a lot of it comes from an aspect that you would never expect. So in order for this to make sense, let's head to the year 1985. As we
Okay.
all know, LA was in its roughest decade. Chaos and madness ruled the streets of South Central Compton and Watts for.
I really hope once he says that shit, once he like reveals the Crip shit in Tacoma, like somehow it just all makes sense. Like how all this is like together, but I frankly don't see that happening.
Hundreds of LA families began moving all the way up to the Pacific Northwest. Some went
It is the
This isn't just
Oh,
any chat, it's ClickUp chat. Sure, you can tag your team,
I was just saying this
customers,
is
and
like the context chapter
Portland,
of the
others
video, I
went to
guess.
Seattle, and a whole lot went to Tacoma.
This is
Portland
still
and Seattle
ridiculous.
were expensive, and Tacoma was the perfect place for those who wanted to create their own financial future. Yes, it was lower class, but that meant that it was cheap. Well, shortly after arriving, the new residents discovered a gold mine.
Oh,
Okay, not a literal gold mine, but they found a completely untapped
oh,
market. And with
I
their
get it.
LA street connections, it was too easy for many to pass up. Long story short, Tacoma was a poor city that had a lot of hopeless individuals who wanted a way out of their reality. And the LA residents had access to what could be a temporary solution. So
How is that necessary, bro? How?
the I-5 became a major corridor between LA and Tacoma, where all kinds of things were being brought up north. At first, the city had no idea what was going on, but all the LA transplants were living large. And once the word spread around LA, thousands of people began moving up north. So eventually, every LA neighborhood had representation in Tacoma. And naturally, this made things kind of awkward. They were so used to being organized that they had no idea how to operate in this new environment. So, to get everyone in order, two twin brothers decided to organize. That would be Diamond and Malone Boyd, and they happened to live on 23rd and MLK, right in the heart of the Hilltop neighborhood. So, together they formed the Hilltop Crips. It started with a dozen or so members, but quickly expanded. The Hilltop neighborhood is located on the northeast side of the city, and just like the name, it's on a hill. The area looks just like the hillside neighborhood in Vallejo. If you've been to both places, you know that they look identical. They're both clearly middle-class suburban areas that took a left turn. Anyways, as the LA guys claimed the Hilltop as their territory, other groups in Tacoma formed as well.
Wow.
Just 10 minutes away, LA
Pirates.
Pyrus formed on the east side. And here
Oh,
is where
shit.
things fell apart. 1988. At this point, Tacoma was like a bubble ready to burst at any moment. Tensions were naturally really high, but everyone was just there to make money. All it was going to take was one bad decision. And here is how the
This
story
dude's so wow. He's saying that like they just go there to do illegal things and
The
like trap,
Hilltop
bro.
and East Side started bumping
Crazy.
heads over money, and the Hilltop members wanted to send a message. August
But
28th.
like there's really but think about it, bro. Also in Tacoma, bro, this had to be like the like one less than 1% of people still in Tacoma were like trapping and shit, bro. This dude's making it sound like it was a fucking like Afghanistan scene, bro.
3 Hilltop members drive down to the east side on 47th and K, a known Pyru hangout spot. That's where they spot 5 people outside. Thankfully, everything was okay, but the east side was completely shocked. No one expected anything like this to occur in their new city. So later that day, the east side wanted to send a message back. 8 p.m. 5 East Siders get in their SUV. Brian Allen, Terrace Miller, Nathaniel Miles, Daryl Lee, and Anthony Rawls. They arrive in the Hilltop neighborhood and drive around. And on 23rd and Sheridan, they spot a man named Bernard Houston sitting in his car. This was officially Tacoma's very first tragedy of this sort. Yes, you heard that correctly. The first in the history
First
of Tacoma,
gang violence
and
act.
unfortunately, it would not be the last. In fact, it sparked off a wild decade. The city went from 0 bodies in 1987 to 28 in 1989 alone. And that may not seem like a lot, but Tacoma only has 200,000 residents. So in reality, it was far worse than you can imagine. The sudden trend concerned everyone.
Bro, so he just said
City went from 0 bodies in 1987 to 28 in 1989 alone. And that may not seem like a lot, but Tacoma only has 200,000 residents. So
yeah, it's
in
just
reality,
saying
it was
low-key,
far worse than
everything
you
I
can
just
imagine.
said was
The
like,
sudden
bro.
trend concerned everyone in Tacoma, and maybe a little too much in one case. And
that's
that
crazy.
introduces us to a man named Bill Folk. Bill happens to be an Army Ranger located at Fort Lewis. And with his small salary, he decided to purchase a home for just $10,000 cash. The house is located on Ash Street, right in the heart of the Hilltop. However, because the area looks decent, Bill had no clue what he was getting himself into. As soon as he moved in, he looks decent. Located on Ash Street, decided to purchase a home for just $10,000 cash. The house is located on Ash Street, right in the heart of the Hilltop. However, because the area looks decent, Bill had no clue.
Bro, he was just saying like, this is the worst place ever. This is the Like what? And now he's saying, yeah, just because it looks a little decent, bro.
What he was getting himself into. As soon as he moved in, he began noticing all kinds of suspicious activity, and as a response, he decided to start videotaping everything in the neighborhood. He thought that this wouldn't be a big deal. He's just a good citizen playing his role. However, this was a new Tacoma. September 23rd, 1989. Bill decides to host a neighborhood barbecue in front of his house with a bunch of fellow Rangers. The idea is to show neighborhood unity against the bad activities, and unfortunately, the Hilltop Crips are not a fan. 3 p.m. A group of Hilltop members pull up to the barbecue in their car. The driver rolls down his window, points his finger at Bill, and says, "Boom, boom." And a few hours later, they come back, but this time with rocks and all kinds of threats. So in response, Bill calls up his fellow Rangers at Fort Lewis to come as soon as possible. 15 Rangers in total, and they all take positions inside of Bill's house. 9:20 p.m. The car slowly turns the corner onto Ash Street, and as it approaches, it turns its lights off. So in return from his upstairs window, Bill orders his fellow Rangers to shut off all the lights in the house. And here is where things get controversial. One of the sides initiates and things get hectic. 15 Rangers against dozens of Hilltop members. It lasted for 10 minutes, but thankfully everyone was okay, or at least that's what they thought. However, that same night, some men arrived at a Seattle hospital.
Why would you do? That's like so ridiculous. That's how you tell a story, bro.
Members. It lasted for 10 minutes, but thankfully everyone was okay, or at least that's what they thought. However,
Like what?
that same night, some men arrived at a Seattle hospital an hour away. To this day, no one knows if these two things were connected. Well, after this, all of the blame was put on the Hilltop members. However, even today, the Hilltop community claims
that kind of
Bill
makes sense,
initiated
actually,
the
how he did
entire
that.
situation. I guess we will never know the truth.
That's what they
but
thought,
either way,
because
this story made the national
don't have
news. And
really
because of
evidence
this,
yet.
Tacoma's Mayor Gene Moss wanted to send a message. So instantly, the DA filed cases against a bunch of Hilltop members, but most notably the co-founder Malone Boyd. In 1990, Malone Boyd received 24 and a half years for distribution. Yes, you heard that correctly. 24 and a half years. Some say this was compensation for how little Tacoma was solving in general. It seemed like no one would ever talk and everyone would get away with what they did. And for that reason, the 1990s were completely out of control. Every single day was wild, and that's why Seattle began calling Tacoma Compton. It became the city where everyone would raise their eyebrows if you
No
said
one
it.
calls it
It
Compton,
became
bro.
the last resort city in the Pacific Northwest. If all else failed, you could always go to Tacoma. Well, over the next couple of decades, nothing interesting came out of the region. However, in 2009, a very interesting story came back up. If we head back to the first story of Hilltop's Bernard Houston, remember that none of the 5 men ever went down for it. So let me break it down. After this incident, all of the men went their separate ways. Nathan Miles, also known as Tex, became a landscaper in Steilacoom, Washington. Brian Allen moved to Vancouver and became a Canadian citizen. And there he became a personal trainer, community rec director, and happily married. So it's safe to say that those two turned their lives around after making mistakes. And for the other 3, well, they happened to be in the system for other incidents. And here is where things get interesting. In early 2009, a man decided to call Tacoma police anonymously. He claimed that he was cellmates with Brian Allen and Anthony Rawls in the early 1990s. He then proceeded to say that both of them had admitted to the incident that took the life of Bernard Houston. The man said that his conscience wouldn't let him hold it in any longer. So directly after this, Rawls and Allen went down. Brian Allen happened to be vacationing in Mexico with his wife when he got the news. Well, eventually, all 5 men got life.
Oh my god.
Colorado does winter different.
Bro!
Colorado.
I would slime him out,
Does
bro.
justice have a shelf life?
No, he got all of them life. He got all of them. Oh my god. You know they tried to kill him in jail, or they had to keep him separated, bro. You would get slimed out, bro.
Right 21 years passing, the family of Bernard Houston was grateful and happy to finally get this result. However, the family
Oh my god, I would be so mad!
who were leading productive lives.
Because of his conscience. His conscience. His conscience got all of them. I'm so dead, bro. Oh my god.
Solving this was a big deal.
I would be so mad.
So this was big news for Tacoma's DA, and he wouldn't stop.
Nah, cause imagine if you like were in jail and you maybe even, bro, you were like doing good shit in jail. Like they can take classes in jail and shit, so you could be like locked in on that, like getting your life around. And then this other dude is talking about his conscience, and you all get life. Oh my god,
There.
I would be so mad.
Took down 36 Hilltop members for all kinds of events. However, there was really nothing that serious. But despite this, the average sentence in the takedown was 22 years. After reading this, I was shocked, so I went ahead and did some research. Apparently, Seattle is known for a super lenient justice system, and Tacoma is the total opposite. Everyone in the area knows to tighten up when they're driving through Tacoma. Well, that takes us to the new era of Hilltop. These days, Tacoma is pretty quiet. Well, that's not entirely true, but Tacoma is definitely not to Compton anymore. It's more like to San Diego instead. Anyways, Hilltop is represented by a few rappers.
Wow.
Louis Sparks, Blue
Okay, so they changed it around. They changed it around. Good for them. Good for them out in the tack. So that's why my knowledge that I was talking about at the beginning of the video was like no one calls it to Compton and shit. Maybe because like I wasn't like around. I wasn't alive when this shit happened. So I don't know their
At this
lingo.
point, it's everyone in Tacoma. Sadly, it's even people that they used to be allied with. The old East Side Pyrus are pretty much gone now, and the area is pretty nice. So instead, Hilltop is rivals with an area known as Knockout. The Knockout Crips are located between 47th and 56th.
Damn,
Mostly
so there is
hang out on
somebody still
47th.
active.
But due to the area being expensive now, many of the members established themselves in a suburb south of Tacoma called Lakewood. And here, Knockout claim 100th down to 119. Then next, you have the 96 GDs located in South Tacoma off of 96. Okay, I'm not gonna lie.
Oh, so now Lakewood, that's Low Compton.
Pacific Northwest definitely has the least intimidating people I've
So
ever
it just
seen,
rotated
but
'cause
unfortunately looks could
that's
be
like
deceiving.
where
May
they can
2nd,
afford it, I guess,
2017,
he's
rapper
saying.
Blue Flame Belly is getting his haircut at a barbershop in nearby Lakewood. Due to the rivalry, this is a risky place to get a haircut for him. However, he stays low-key. Well, little does he know, two fellow Hilltop members are there as well, but hiding in the parking lot. Jesse Hinton and Charles McKee, two of his close friends.
They're
Well,
way
after the
too old to
haircut,
be
Belly
doing
gets
this,
up and
bro.
heads to across the yellow hill to get a haircut for him there as well, but hiding in the parking lot. Jesse Hinton and Charles
Bro.
McKee, two of his close friends. Well, after the haircut,
They gotta
he
worry.
gets
They
up
gotta
and
get
heads
onto
to
bigger
right
things,
there.
bro.
Bang.
You like 40 popping
These
in a
incidents
kid.
show the Hilltop community because
Crazy.
everyone involved were close friends. Sometimes you have to watch the ones closest to you and peep their energy. Thankfully, Belly made it, but this wouldn't be the end of problems for Hilltop rappers. February 11th, 2018. It's a Friday night and Neff the Pharaoh and OMB PZ have a show in South Seattle. And for those of you who don't know, Seattle and Tacoma love Northern California music. It's the #1 region outside
Shout
of
out Northern
California.
California. No, hold on. Shout out Northern California music real quick. Shout out EBK J-Bo and
The
all.
California music. So any Bay Area rapper is going to draw a big crowd.
And
in
Mike
Seattle.
Sherm, and
well,
Mike
at the
Sherm.
show, Hilltop rapper Louis Sparks is set to open up for them. So he goes on stage, performs, and this is where things get dicey. Some say he was on stage, and others say that it was after his performance. But somebody in the club was looking for him. Bang.
Nah,
To this
not
day, no one
Gluey
really knows
Sparks.
Why it happened or who did it, and it
Rest
remains
in
as one of
peace.
the strangest stories in Seattle history. But don't be deceived. Overall, 2018 and 2019 were extremely quiet in Tacoma. In fact, they were the two safest years since 1987. But since 2020, everything has risen back to 1990s levels. Of course, most of the chaos has something to do with the Hilltop. Why the sudden wave, I don't know. But if you know, let me know in the comments. Well, that's gonna do it for this episode of Swamp Stories. If you enjoyed the
What
video,
the fuck?
make
He has a video about how EBK J-Bo backdoored Slowby? Oh my god. That's gotta be fake, bro. J-Bo, you gotta get on. You gotta